So the other day I had an idea for a game, and unlike most of my ideas for games, it actually seemed like something I can make in Game Maker in 2D in a fairly short space of time. And so yesterday I started making it. And this is the first prototype I made after like 4 hours. As you can see, it's a top-down stealth game, space game. It is a stealth game as well, but it's set in space, and you're this crudely drawn circle, and you thrust by just clicking the mouse, and the strength of your thrust depends on how far away the cursor is. So you can go super fast, probably too fast in this build because you can't actually control yourself at that speed. But you can also zoom in and like do smaller thrusts and carefully control yourself. So that was the game after 4 hours. This is the game after 8 hours. As you can see, it's got a stupid intro credits thing now, and there's one enemy in it. And oh yeah, you're not a blob anymore. And oh, it's probably really, really loud, isn't it? But you can now zoom infinitely. Oh shit. We need to get back to the enemy, don't we? You can also hear the engine cooling down after you thrust, because you get really hot when you thrust. And that's what a lot of the game is about. It's going to be called Heat Signature, I think. And it's going to be about avoiding detection from enemy ships by controlling how much you thrust and how hot your ship gets, because everyone can detect heat signatures of hot objects in space. When this enemy sees you, he just looks at you, like really ominously. That's all he can do. And his vision cone doesn't quite align properly with his body sometimes. But it had the same basic idea, and the great innovation here was that it had gone from being a small square into infinite space. Although the infinite space starts to look a bit weird after you go too far in it. Like the stars turn into bands. It's really hard to slow down. So you can see, even after you slow down, you can sort of tell that the stars spawned in these bands a little bit. It's not too bad, but it wasn't perfect. And so this is a build after 11 hours, and I should be able to just keep going in this direction in order to catch up with. Yep, there's the enemy. And the enemy can now kind of chase you, but he's a complete psycho and doesn't really know how to control his speed. That probably won't change. The enemy behavior's changed a bit since then, but they're still going to be insane. And you can see when he gets too close, he back thrusts to try and not overshoot, because originally they just overshot wildly and it was insane. But they still can't attack you, and they still can't actually detect your heat, which is kind of the point of the game. So it hadn't actually come that far here. So this is a build after about 11 hours, and we now have vision radiuses. Oh no, incorrect vision radiuses for the enemies. They're actually about twice as big as they display, because they got radius and diameter confused with the circles. And I think, can the enemies shoot you in this build? Yes, they can. Yep, there we go. And he hit me. So now I'm completely unable to control. So this is still pretty basic at the moment. It's just about avoiding getting seen by these enemies. And that's done with simple vision cones at the moment, which is not that interesting, and it's very easy to avoid them. But the thing with the infinite space is really interesting to me, because it took me a while to figure out how you do that, because you can't just have... Like, I can make a really big room in Game Maker, but I can't make an infinite room, and the bigger you make it, I think the kind of just the more taxing all of the maths you do gets. So the player is actually never moving in this. That was the solution in the end. The player just stays exactly where he is. Everything else moves relative to him. And as you can see, if you catch up an enemy, you can kind of shut him down by clamping onto him. So yeah, the player is actually... It's hard to get your head around, but he's staying perfectly still, and everything is moving in the opposite direction to what the player should be moving in. So this isn't the camera following the camera is staying still, and the player is staying still, and the stars are moving. And it gets complicated, of course, because enemies need to move not only relative according to your velocity, but also according to their own velocity. They need to add the two things together, and you've got to keep track of that without confusing the two. But it actually wasn't too hard. Once I just got my head around it, it was fairly easy to implement. And so now this is an infinite game. You can go as far as you like. And probably in practice I would want to be limiting the number of how much of the universe is simulating, like how many things it keeps track of after you've flown away from them. But right now it keeps track of everything. So everything you ever see will still exist out there somewhere, and it might be billions of pixels away from you. But in theory, if you knew exactly where it was, you'd get back to it. And eventually, we'll cull them when you get really, really far away. But we'll see how performance is actually affected by that. And so this build is where I am now on day 2. And you might see the stars now look a little bit 3D. They have different brightnesses and they move at different rates as you move. And the main thing in this build is... here we go. Here's an enemy. Lots of enemies just roaming around, and now they can detect your heat. So you'll see a red line coming out of that guy. Gets closer to you the closer he is to detecting you. And whether he detects you depends on your heat level, which is, you can tell pretty easily from how hot you're glowing, and how close you are to him. So if I jet closer to him, obviously I risk being detected like that, and if I jet away from him, his detection is going down because of the distance, but up because I'm heating myself up. So if you try and get away too quickly, you could actually get caught just trying to do that. And he see me. So it's kind of a trade-off. You have to, if you're on exactly the right course to intersect with him, then you don't need to use the thrusters, so you can stay perfectly cool, and he has no chance of detecting you, unless he turned around and saw you, which he won't do. But if you need to adjust your course, then you have to thrust, and thrusting increases your heat, and increasing your heat increases how easily they can detect you. And the closer you get to them, the more critical it is that you don't heat yourself up too much. And in this build, everything is randomized, so every enemy you encounter has a different sensitivity, and you can tell how sensitive they are by how big their sensor radius is, that big red circle around them. I'm not actually finding any enemies, which is a problem with random games. If you go really fast like this, and you're really hot, then you run the risk of being detected really easily. But luckily I was going pretty fast there, and he didn't detect me. So this guy, I think his sensor is pretty sensitive, because that's a pretty big red radius. You'll see there's no line right now because I have 0 heat. I am very, very cool. But as I jet towards him, it gets risky. Oh god, and there's another enemy. Also sensitive. Oh shit, oh shit. Okay, I'm going to stick with my original one. I'm going to try and get closer to him. So it's all about trying to get on the right trajectory so that you're on a collision course, because then you don't need to adjust your thrust. Ah, and I screwed it up! You're getting a lot of heat if you get shot. That tends to happen. So travelling fast is fairly risky. Travelling fast and accelerating is really risky, because then you'll collide with someone's heat radius before you get a chance to react, and they'll detect you really easily. But what I did there was I stopped accelerating, so I cooled down, so that even though I passed right through this guy's radius, he didn't detect me because I was quite cool when I did it. So that looks like a good collision course. Not too worried about that because I'm cooling off as I get closer to him. And then when I hit him, shut him down, which is really cool. And you can stay attached to them. I've even made it so that if you're attached to something, right now it's only enemy corpses that are in the world to attach yourself to. But no, because I'm attached to this guy, even if I pass through someone's vision cone, they won't see me because you're kind of disguised. I might have it be some kind of camouflage drive or something at some point. But yeah, you could also just leave it and then push those wrecks around by thrusting and then abandon them to crash into things. So yeah, right now it's just a very simple stealth game based on heat and thrust. Jesus Christ, that was incredibly close. And, fuck. You see me. When you're pursued, obviously you're a bit faster than the enemy, so that's good. And if I cut my engines, I'll cool down. You see this white radius? That's the radius at which he loses my signature. And that gets closer to him the cooler I am. He can detect me more easily if I'm hot. He can track me at longer ranges. So when you're getting away, you want to accelerate really quickly, and then you want to cut your engines so that your heat signature gets as small as possible so that people lose track of you. And that gives it a nice little, I don't know, nice little tactic to it. The enemy, when they lose track of you, they just carry on going in that same direction, so you also want to change course after they've lost you. Otherwise they'll just crash into you just because they keep heading the way they were heading. But yeah, it's already pretty fun, and there's loads of things. I have specific plans for what I want to do with this next, but the nice thing about it is it's very flexible. I could stop here, pretty much. I could add a very simple thing where it just counts how many ships you destroyed, and that's the whole point of the game. I'd like it to be a lot more interesting than that. I'd like it to be more like a roguelike, where you have specific objectives, and I'd like to do something a bit more interesting with the combat, but I'm not going to talk about that until I've actually done it. So yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do with it exactly, but it hasn't taken very much of my time yet, and I'm only going to keep working on it while it's really efficient. You know, everything I'm doing right now is just changing the game dramatically every day, every few hours, in fact, and that's really, really cool. And if it keeps being fruitful in that way, if it keeps advancing in really interesting ways and getting better and better, then I'll keep working on it for a while. And if it doesn't, I'll just stop and go back to the other project, which was more of a gunpointy style side-on stealth game thing in Unity, which I'm definitely going to carry on with, but I'm taking a break from it a little bit because working in Unity and working with Unity's physics are both separate, incredibly complex problems, and it's really nice to take a quick break from that and work with something where I speak the language, like I know GameMaker really, really well, and so I can make things super, super fast in it, and that's incredibly satisfying. So yeah, thanks for watching.